Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, sponsored by Full Pool Wines and our subscribers. We're recording on May. I'll start over again. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of this. Oh my God, dude. Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, sponsored by Full Pool Wines and our subscribers. We're recording on Monday, April 6, 2026. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. Today, I am joined again by Aaron Campo and Engineer Lickett. The league portion of what we've come to call the road show is now in the rearview mirror, and frankly, I'm not sure how it could have gone much better. Saturday's win gave the Sounders 10 points from this road trip, which included 4 straight shutouts. In this one, the Sounders got another goal from Paul Rothrock, giving him 5 across all competitions, and a 5th shutout in 6 games by Andrew Thomas. Now, they'll put the finishing touches on this stretch of 8 games away from Lumen Field when they face Tigres in the CONCACAF Champions Cup quarterfinals, riding a fair amount of momentum. Now, Aaron, before we started recording, you and I went back to the transcripts, and we looked at what we said about this road trip and what we thought was going to be a satisfying or acceptable number of points. What did we say, Aaron?
I think we said, I just looked at it, that an acceptable number of points, the threshold for not being a disaster was 5 or 6. We'd be happy with 7 or 8, especially 8, I think we said would be quite good. 9 was plausible, but after that, you're getting really greedy. And lo and behold, Sounders got 10 points. And some of the context of that conversation was 8 points on the road, 8 or 9 points on the road. That's target, that's pretty greedy. But look at the teams we're playing, right? And in reality, some of them aren't great, but San Jose looks like a legitimate Western Conference powerhouse at this point.
Yeah.
Minnesota has not looked bad. Especially last
Louis
weekend.
Even doesn't look too bad.
St. Louis doesn't look too bad. I think Houston, we'll get into that game in depth here in a second, but I think Houston looks quite good, actually. I think they looked like a playoff team in this game. They've been pretty decent this year. So, I think you got to feel great about it, man. I mean, they could go into Mexico City and have a bad night and not Mexico City.
Monterrey.
And have a bad night and erase some of that goodwill. But in terms of how the league is going, it's pretty good at this point. I mean, I think they're in 5th place, so it feels kind of weird to say this, but I think that the Sounders are still in the mix for the Shield, which this may be the latest they've been in the mix for the Shield since 2014.
Well, 2021, I would say.
That's true.
That was the year that they went 13 unbeaten to start the season. But since then, I would say.
Since then, for sure. Yeah.
Easily the best start that they've had. And, this, in some ways, this is, I I haven't actually looked at the points that they claimed in 2021 through 6 games, but I don't imagine it was much more than they have right now. They were tying a lot of games, if I remember correctly. And but this has been I think I've been very impressed on a lot of ways with this start. But the biggest of which is if you just look at the fixtures that you compare the fixtures of this season to last year. So you look at San Jose, you look at St. Louis, you look at Minnesota, you look at Houston, and even you can look at Colorado, the home game. They tied Colorado last year. They lost at RSL, so that's a wash. But then they lost at San Jose. They lost at Minnesota. They lost at St. Louis. And they did win against Houston, so that also is a wash. But that's I think it was 9 points ahead of last year based on a fixture to fixture comparison. That's feeling pretty good. I mean, there's not a lot of ways that you gotta tie yourself up into knots a little bit to be frustrated by this start. And I know that there are people who are frustrated at the relative lack of goal scoring, but man, I just can't get worked up about not scoring a ton of goals on the road if you're pitching shutouts.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's unusual for a team to play 5 games on the road in league play. They haven't, like you said, they haven't played at Lumen since February at this point. And so you don't
crazy.
Normally, it is very crazy. But you don't normally see that many consecutive road games. And when they're interspersed throughout the year, if you play at home and you blow the doors off somebody 4-0, and then you go on the road and win 1-0 in a game like we saw over the weekend, that 1-0 is just like, yeah, well, we just won 4-0 a week ago. Like,
right.
You got to do what you got to do on the road. But when you have to watch it 5 times in a row, not as exciting. But these are games they weren't winning last year.
Right.
These are games that they're getting a point from. They weren't winning a lot of 1-0s at all last year. The defense struggled a lot. I think
they only won 2 1-0 games last year, and they've already won 3 1-0 games this year.
Yeah, the defense looks fixed. Obviously, there's still plenty of season for that to turn around, but all of the things that they were doing last year that were frustrating and seemed uncharacteristic, they're not doing those things this year. Systemically, they just seem a lot more solid. I think that they are being a little more pragmatic, but I think that makes sense to do. Like, I think that last season they really wanted to go for it a lot, and I think that made sense in the context of the season and what people were wanting to see, and some of the excitement was lagging a bit. This season, I think they've got people back in the fold a little bit more, and you just have to set a good tone for the season and do what you got to do to get points on the road. When they've been at home, they've been pretty exciting to watch. So I don't really have a lot of concerns about that. And now, coming up soon, they'll have a whole bunch of games at home, not in a row, because I think they play 2 at home, then they go on the road again, but they'll have a big chunk of games at home where, they can play some fun, exciting soccer, score some goals, and I think get people really excited. How they follow this up, though, is going to be important, right? Because right now, I think you have to say this is a team, even though they're in 5th place, seems kind of crazy to say, they're a supporter shield contender. They've got 13 points from their first 6. That's pretty good. And if they can keep up the home form that they had last year and even be average on the road the rest of the year, they're totally in the mix. They've just set themselves up really, really well, I think, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they could play at a 1-point pace for the rest of the season on the road.
Yeah.
And they would easily beat what they had last year. That would put them on 22 road points, which isn't a great total, but it would be enough to be. I mean, you're a playoff team easily. If you're got on 22 road points, you're going to be a playoff team. That's obviously not the Sounders' goal, but it just sets them up very nicely. Going, like you said, just to kind of put things in context of what they were doing last year. They had only had 1 shutout to this point last year. They had not had a shutout win to this point last year. They weren't exactly bad defensively, but they were not great. They'd given up 8 goals at this point last year. They've given up 2 this year. And, even though they are 5th in the table, that's even a little deceiving because they're fourth in the supporter. They're tied on points for fourth in the supporter shield standings, and they're only 3 points back of LAFC, and all the teams in the top 6 have all played at least 3 home games, and some of them have played 4 or 5 home games. So the Sounders are banking a lot of road points here. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the goal going into this road trip, I think, was really advance from Champions Cup and don't do anything to take yourself out of the supporter shield race. And they did that with flying colors. I mean, this is a team that looks like they know who they are. They have, they've and I think it's easy to forget that they've had a ton of injuries. Tino Lopez wasn't on the roster to begin the season, and he's started the last three games, all shutouts, and he looks totally confident at center back. I mean, he may be the third or fourth center back at this point. I mean, he might be the second center back. I don't know. But Yeimar has been out for most of this time. Then Alex Roldan got hurt. Jordan Morris has missed most of the time. Pedro de la Vega has obviously been out for the whole year. Albert Rusnak didn't start this game. You can kind of just go down the list, and
Danny Mazovsky was hurt.
Mazovsky started, wasn't starting at the beginning of the season because of a back issue. So yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be really, really pleased with everything that the Sounders have done. And man, I'll tell you, they showed the video of Brian Schmetzer's post-game speech in the locker room, and it wasn't fire and brimstone, and it wasn't anything big, but I just really came away appreciating the culture that the Sounders have really built here. And there is this camaraderie, and there is this sense of, MLS rightfully gets beat up a lot for not really having proper clubs, that these are just kind of groups of players who are thrown together and they don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of teams that have a real ethos inside of them.
Yeah.
And I think what we're really seeing right now is the Sounders have that. And that's not going to be a surprise to anyone who is listening to this, but it really does. I think it really underscores what they've built when they are able to start like this. I mean, they are basically playing every game with 4 or 5 starters that they signed from Tacoma Defiance. Half their roster basically comes from Tacoma Defiance. They just signed Peter Kingston. I'm just blown away really at what they've managed to do. And yeah, it would be nice if they spent some more money, but I do think there's a trade-off, and the trade-off right now feels like a pretty good one.
Yeah. And I think that you can hold 2 opinions at once, right? It would be really nice if I felt more confident that they were going to spend money when they needed to.
Right.
And they haven't really needed to, because they have this culture, they have this pipeline. Every young kid that comes in and gets into the lineup looks ready to be there. Even if they're not setting the world on fire, even if they're just doing a job, filling space, whatever, I've never seen, well, I don't want to say never, but it's extremely rare that you see a Defiance product come in and just look totally off pace, totally unprepared, totally lost. And that's
I'm trying to think of the last time it happened. Maybe you go back to, I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, you got to go back a couple years to find players who were kind of thrown into the deep end and didn't look. And I'm talking about like one-off cases. I'm not talking about everyone will talk about the teenager game in Austin in 2021, and that was pretty impressive. But in a lot of ways, that was not, they kind of got lucky in that one a little bit. Sure. They held on for dear life, and they were playing a team that, was struggling to finish. But that's not what is going on anymore. I mean, the Sounders are going into places like Vancouver and just standing toe to toe with some of the best teams in the league. And
yeah,
I love it. I love watching this team. Peter Kingston came into this game late, and I was just saying how he never looks overmatched. He is a 24-year-old defensive midfielder out there doing, just shows he belongs right away.
Yeah.
Obviously Tino Lopez, like I said, is a even better example of that. But you can kind of just go down the list of players that they've been able to bring up, and players who were not highly regarded. Like Snyder Brunell is not the same as Peter Kingston. Snyder Brunell is a player who clearly they identified early and they brought him in, and he's clearly very talented. Peter Kingston is someone who went through the academy, spent a long time in the academy, was highly considered, but not necessarily a top prospect. He goes to college, doesn't really stick anywhere. He ends up doing 5 years between Seattle U and UW. He goes and plays. He doesn't get drafted. He signs with Ballard, or he plays for Ballard, and then he signs for Defiance. And he just sort of like keeps grinding, and he gets his chance. And now he's, they had this video of him after, right after he didn't get drafted, I guess. And he was very sort of like sober and said, I'm just going to keep putting my head down and try to make this thing happen. Yeah. And lo and behold, here he is.
How many guys on this team were like 6 months from going and doing something else?
No.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're all talented players, but the margins at this level are so thin.
Yeah. And it's just like someone giving you a chance.
Someone giving you a chance and finding the right culture where you're allowed to, to be given the chance and you're allowed to make mistakes. How many teams in MLS would have gone out and signed the first veteran free agent center back they could have? As soon as Jamar pulled up, the GM would have been on the phone with somebody, or they would have made
Daniel
a trade.
Steers, get down here. We need you.
And the Sounders don't do that because they they trust that they at least trust that, we got to see what we have in the guys we have in house.
Right.
And that is admirable. I know that there are some people who find that annoying, who think it's cheap, who want the Sounders to go out and get the free agent.
And maybe it is cheap.
It's okay to be.
I don't think it's just that, but I agree with you. I'm with you. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think that sometimes the Sounders are cheap. I think sometimes people complain about the Sounders being smart, right? It's like anytime they don't spend money gets lumped into one big thing. And it's like, well, no, sometimes it's okay to see what you have in the guys that are already in your organization who are going to take, like, how great is it to have these two guys taking up supplemental spots who are playing real minutes, who are not hitting your cap at all, and who either, maybe they're going to turn into good, solid MLS players. Maybe you're going to be able to trade them for assets so they can go start somewhere else. Maybe they'll turn into long-term starters. I mean, probably not, and maybe they just end up being back-end players for a couple of years and they go do something else.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about the Sounders is that there's examples of all of these things. You've got a Jordan Morris who, will likely be a lifer. You've got a Christian Roldan who, I'll count him among the sort of through the pipeline players. You've got an Alex Roldan, guys who achieved reasonably high levels and just stayed around forever. And then you've got the Georgie Manungus and the Danny Levas and the Obed Vargases at the high end of players who were essentially moved on when they either outplayed the league or they just couldn't get on the field. And then they've got players who will also stick around and fill out the bottom end of the roster. Like a Cody, like a couple weeks ago, Cody Baker started against San Jose, and I don't think it was almost unremarked at how competent he looked. This is a guy who barely gets on the field for the Sounders, but whenever he does, looks like he totally belongs.
Yeah.
And I just think that being able to cycle in players at various levels of the sort of the need chart is really important. And it is what builds culture. And, you look at how many players the Sounders have right now who started playing for this organization as kids, as children, as 12, 13-year-olds. And it's not a small number, it's at least a half dozen guys who started playing for the Sounders at the beginning of their academy careers, that they were being invited to be guest players for teams and whatnot. And I don't think you can, and yes, it's important to have the Christian Roldan and the Stephen Fry and the guys at the top of the roster who can impart that culture, but there is something to be said about the bubbling the culture up from beneath too. And so you can bring in players from outside the organization and they just sort of immediately get it. Like Nikola Petkovic, really sad story. Here's a guy who, seemingly was a little lost at Charlotte. He comes here and you could just see the way he was talking about being here and how like it was a different environment. And there's a winning aspect of it, but it's also like there's a camaraderie and there's a togetherness and it's not clicky. It doesn't seem clicky. I'm sure there are cliques within the team, but it seems like every time we have a lot more players who come in and are enamored with the culture here than players who can kind of just be like, yeah, whatever, just let me get my paycheck.
People talk so much throughout MLS's history. Happy birthday to MLS, by the way. It's 30th anniversary today.
Yeah.
They talk about when is MLS going to get to where Europe is, and when is it, when are we going to have the same kind of culture? When this is how things are other places, right? The great clubs outside of the very top end, Manchester United and Barcelona and blah, 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 blah. Although they have plenty of academy products come through as well. But this is how it is in most of the rest of the world, right? You have this steady supply of players that come up through your academy who are playing meaningful minutes for you. And maybe some of them only play for you for a couple of years before dropping down a level. And plenty of them will go on to bigger clubs or, move up a pyramid, whatever it is. But this is unique in MLS, this kind of reliance on your pipeline and your academy. And when it's not unique in MLS, that is when I think we're going to know that all those investments and teams have put into the academies have been worth it. And I think it's also when American soccer is going to start leveling up a little bit, when you have this proven pipeline of coming up all the way through the academy, playing club soccer at the MLS level, and then moving on to bigger and better things. And that becomes a much more consistent thing rather than what tends to happen now, which is the best 16-year-olds get sold before they ever play for the first team.
Right.
And then, you're left with guys who weren't quite good enough to play at the highest levels in youth soccer.
Yeah. And I think I probably talked about this previously, and I'll sort of raise my hand and take some blame for throwing around the idea that the Sounders are sort of becoming a selling club. But I think there is an important distinction between what a classic selling club is and what the Sounders are. And the main difference is that a selling club is selling players up and down their roster and is not necessarily interested in developing a winning. Winning is just not one of the main focuses. And the Sounders are right now mostly selling players who can't break in, who don't have clear roles within the team. I really like Georgie Manungu's talent. I think he is probably going to do very well at Colorado, but there is a reality that he was not, he probably wouldn't have started on Saturday. I don't, the only time he's getting starts most likely is when the Sounders are really heavily rotating. Reed Baker Whiting looks like he is really starting to find his footing at Nashville, but man, I got to tell you, I don't think if he was here, I don't see how he'd be starting over Nuhu, because Nuhu is playing great. Danny Leyva is going to set a career high, maybe double the number of minutes that he's ever played, and he looks like he's balling out for Necaxa. I don't know that he would have been playing any more than he did last year. That doesn't seem very likely. And you can sort of just go down the list, and every guy ended up going to a better situation for them, but the Sounders got something out of it. And so it's not that they're a selling club. It's that they are now in a position where they can sell extra talent because that's how reliable the pipeline has become.
That is the thing, is that when you develop a lot of good players, you're going to sell good players. And I think that there's this mindset in American sports, because soccer is unique in the sense that the farm system in baseball is not the same as the academy system, right? NBA teams do not have 12-year-olds in their pipeline. Right. So it's different. And, you're gonna lose good players. You're gonna sell good players, and you can't look at that as we lost that trade or we lost that sale or whatever.
Right.
There are so many great players who came through the Ajax system who didn't make their careers at Ajax, who got sold somewhere else. Barcelona players, Manchester City players. Manchester City sells tons of good players. Albert Rusnak, for example, came up through Manchester City's academy. Great MLS player, right? Was never going to play for Manchester City. And I do think that that's something that Sounders fans are going to have to get comfortable with, is that, yeah, like, I'm happy for Reed Baker-Whiting. I loved him here. I wish he could have broken through and won the starting job, but he didn't. And now he's going somewhere where he's going to have a chance to do that and develop and hit the heights that he's going to hit in his career, that he just wasn't going to have that chance here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess we should probably talk a little bit more specifically about this Houston game. It was a game worth talking about, I think. The Sounders, I think you could say that the starting lineup was reflective of at least a little bit of looking to Wednesday. Albert Rusnak didn't start. Jordan Morris didn't start. Hassani Dotson didn't start. I would expect at least those three to start against Tigres. And all three of them came off the bench. And, the first half wasn't great. It was, I think you could argue that even though the Sounders had a pretty significant possession advantage, they really only created one scoring chance, and it was a good scoring chance. Jonathan Bond made a nice save on Jesus Ferreira, but that was really the only true moment of danger, I thought. And then I guess there was maybe a couple like half chances that were, they were close to being real chances. And then they go into halftime, and the first really great chance that they got was when Paul Arriola got played down the wing, and it looked like he had Danny Musovski set up for maybe even a tap in, and his cross, I think so. It goes down as a shot. I kind of think it got deflected out though by the defender. I don't know that Danny actually got there.
Yeah, I did not think that was as clear cut of a chance as other people did, even in real time. I thought that was a difficult finish for sure. And, I would like to see Danny Musovski score that, because he's a guy who needs to be scoring goals to justify his minutes.
He sure does, yeah.
But that, I don't think that was as nailed on of a chance as it maybe looked at first.
Yeah. And it should be said, Andrew Thomas made a couple good saves. Probably the best one was Guilherme kind of dribbled through a couple defenders and really got an impressive shot off that forced Thomas to make a diving save. And that was really probably the only great chance by far the best look I thought that Houston had. And other than that, the Sounders, I thought, really did a good job of just defending and not giving a lot to Houston. We talked a lot about set piece defense coming into this year and how they needed to improve. Maybe there was one decent look on a set piece, but the Sounders have been really good on set pieces so far this year.
Yeah. And that was the biggest thing last year, right? That was the thing. All the smarter stats minded folks than I kept making that point at the end of the season, doing, sort of the analysis of the year. Like, this was a team that was really good defensively from the run of play. It was just really bad set piece defense that undid them. And it hasn't been an issue so far this year. That's for sure.
No, it certainly hasn't. And that's, that bodes well. And then they were able to, by the time Morris came into the game around the 60th minute, him, Rusnak, and Dotson, I think, all came in together, if I remember correctly. And it did feel like the game sort of switched over at that point. Like, the Sounders definitely had a much more cohesive attack. Morris, it's funny. I've seen a fair number of criticisms of Morris, and I keep hearing this notion that he just looks like he's past it. And I don't honestly know what people are watching. Morris.
No, I don't know.
Whenever he's on first of all, he's coming off his best year on a per 90 basis. So the idea that he's somehow far removed from being productive is just not accurate. And he's, he's played like 70 minutes this year. And,
Right.
He's looked like himself. He hasn't necessarily gotten a ton of scoring chances, but he looks fast. He looks like he's, there was a play in this game where he got out into the open field and he literally just bounced off a couple of defenders. And I was like, yeah, this is the Jordan Morris that I'm dying to see.
Yeah.
And, he doesn't necessarily make he gets the assist on the Rothrock goal. And I do think it was not an easy header for him to get to. And I don't know. I don't have any. I'm happy to give him the assist on that one. He got ahead to it, and sure, it was like a popped up header, but he put it in a place where his teammate could finish it. So I don't have a problem with that.
He is just, to me, so clearly in a different caliber of striker from
right.
Osaze and Danny that I just, if you're frustrated with the injuries, I get it. And if you if you want to say he's injury prone and that's why I would rather there be, we have somebody else there, fair enough, right? I'm not going to try to convince you that you're wrong to feel that way. I might, but I'm not going to do it right now. But but when he is playing, he's just so clearly better, and the team just looked so much better after he came on. And I think that was not just him, right? I thought Dotson was right. Quite good. I thought Rusnak was good. So it was the substitutions and the tactical adjustments that I think made the difference as, holistically. But the Sounders were able to keep possession much better because his hold up play was so much better than the Danny's was. He's just every element of what you have to do to be a striker. He is better than his competition. He has the best hold up play. he's best with 1v1s. I think he's at least on par with Osaze aerially, right? Like in terms of like actually converting aerial chances. And there were a couple of times where, the Sounders in the first half attacks that just would have totally died in midfield where Moose would have lost the ball right away, where Jordan was able to make something happen with it. And that just makes the team so much more dangerous as a unit. But I think that this was a game where people who doubt Brian Schmetzer's tactical acumen, people who doubt his ability to make the right changes at the right times, like we still get so many complaints. You hear it all the time on Blue Sky and the Discord, whatever, about Brian not making subs on time, Brian waiting too long, taking off the wrong players. And it's just crazy to me. Like he has made, like every substitution he has made this year has worked as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I don't know that there's been one sub that you could go like, I got that one wrong.
Yeah. I mean, and just the tactical adjustments at the halftime
are consistently very good.
Yeah. They destroyed Houston in the second half. Like Houston was better in the first half. I think the degree to which they were better is maybe overstated by some folks, but they were clearly the better team, right?
Yeah.
The Sounders just obliterated them in the second half. Houston created absolutely nothing at all in the second half. The Sounders were just far, far better. And then they made the right adjustments at the end to win the game. I mean, it's just, it's a pretty good soccer team with a pretty good coaching staff, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be like this was not easy conditions. I mean, the game got delayed by thunderstorms and it was pouring rain virtually the whole game. I can only imagine how exhausting it must have been to play that thing out. But to your point, the Sounders had 0.97 XG to Houston's 0.31 in the second half alone. Like they did not have any real looks. And the last good look they had was around the 65th minute.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was a lot of nothing.
Yeah. And that's a consistent pattern, I feel like, in Sounders games where they just decide the game's over. They just decide the other team is not going to have more chances. They're not going to be scoring. Right. They're not going to be creating anything else. And that's just the way it goes. And like Houston had some set pieces at the end, and those are always nervy, but they didn't create anything from them. There wasn't any danger from them. And the Sounders did not have a ton of chances, but the chances that they did have, the one Jesus had in the first half, took a great save. I was ecstatic to see him shoot. That was really encouraging. He quadrupled his XG for the year with that one shot. So that was wonderful to see. I thought he had a really good game as well. Overall, but seeing him go towards goal was really encouraging.
I will say, speaking of subs, I think the one frustration that I've heard most commonly is that Jesus keeps getting pulled relatively early, and I get it. I wouldn't mind seeing him on the field a little bit more, but I also got to think that they're doing a lot to preserve his legs. Like this is a guy who's probably going to end up playing 50 games. I mean, if he stay, if you got to play 60 minutes, 65 minutes, and that means you get to play 50 games, that seems like a good trade.
And he presses so hard. Like he's just running the whole time he's on the pitch. He probably runs as much as a lot of attacking players do playing 90 minutes.
Yeah. It's it feels good right now. It can all obviously be undone and we're sort of living in the moment, but that's what this is, right? All we can do is live in the moment. And I do like the Sounders' chances against Tigres. I got to say, we're going to do a little bit more talk about Tigres in the second segment. And I will remind people, if you are interested, we talked to John Arnold of Getting CONCACAF last week on Friday, and he gave us a nice little preview of Tigres. So if you're really interested in digging in, you can do that. But I mean, I do like the Sounders' chances. I think this is I feel very positive right now about things. So, hopefully that maintains. And, when I come back, in case people are curious, I'm going to be leaving to Mexico on Thursday, right after the game. So I will be gone for a week. And so hopefully when I come back, we're still in the same mood.
Yeah, but, that would be good. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Is that they've been a great road team before and sucked at home. So they just got to do both. They got to do both this time. And I think we should.
It would be nice. It would be nice. It would definitely be nice. But all right, well, let's take a break, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tigres. We'll talk about some other stuff. Maybe talk about grass since it's going in right now. But you're listening to Nos Audietis on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, and we'll be right back. Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right. In the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newber. Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Audietis, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Welcome back to Nos Audietis on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. All right, so Sounders have a big game against Tigres. They will be going down to El Volcán, which is the historic stadium in Monterrey, as opposed to the Estadio Tecnológico that is where Monterrey play. But this is one of the great atmospheres in North America and frankly in the Western Hemisphere, in the world. I mean, El Volcán is a tremendous place to watch a soccer match. From what I can tell, it's, I would imagine there will be a very good crowd there. The supporters are always very boisterous. And there is we saw when Tigres played Cincinnati that the atmosphere has a way of sort of taking over and almost carrying Tigres to results. And for that reason, I'm really glad that the Sounders get to host the second leg, because it feels like maybe there's little less potential for that in a first leg.
Yeah, that seems fair. I'm sure they have, but I'm trying to recall when the Sounders have played at Tigres before.
In 2013.
2013,
yeah, that was the first leg of the Champions Cup, also the Champions League quarterfinal. They lost in 1-0.
Yeah,
it was a kind of quiet affair, and the thing I'll always remember about it was Siggy was really upset because there was no passive offside called on the goal, and he like the Tigres attacker was in an offside position and was interfering with the play. And every time a play gets ruled out for offside, I think about that play for some reason.
Right. And then the return leg obviously was the one with the DeAndre Yedlin goal.
Yep.
Was it?
And Jimmy Traore scoring
Traore goal. Yeah.
Maybe the most famous goal in Sounders history still.
Two pretty insane goals in that game. Yeah. No, I think the Pedro goal is probably the.
Yeah, I guess now.
Yeah.
But that Jimmy Traore goal for a long time was just sort of a thing of legend.
Yeah, it was a hell of a goal. And that would have been before Tigres were this generation of Tigres, right? Before they were. It was definitely
there was it was like pre-Gignac.
Yeah, best team on the continent for a while, and the Sounders managed to avoid them. So that's that's pretty handy. Yeah.
The only time the Sounders ever kind of played that Tigres team was in Leagues Cup in 2021, which is not really considered the same Leagues Cup that is going on now. The Sounders won that game 3-0. It was at Lumen Field. That was Nico Ladeiros made a return in that game and scored a banger from like 30 yards out or something like that.
I do remember that game, but it felt like a friendly at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of did. But this will not, I don't think, feel like a friendly.
No.
I'm really actually kind of looking forward to just seeing, because this is a real good test, I think, of the Sounders, of their culture, of, they should be able to put something like their best foot forward. Alex Roldan, who I don't think I mentioned in the first segment as someone who will probably start this game. I would imagine Alex Roldan will slot back in at center back. My guess is we're going to get, although I don't know, maybe we get Alex Roldan at right back. Maybe that would be that's actually a very interesting dilemma. And maybe I'll put it to you. Would you rather see Alex starting at right back or center back in this game? So it's like Lopez versus Kalani Kosarienzi.
I don't think I'm not going to blame Brian for starting Alex at center back if that's what he does. But I kind of feel like you got to say to Tino Lopez, like, hey man, you've earned the spot. Like, you've played really well.
Yeah.
Here you go. Like, this is what you get. This is your reward, right? You get to play on the road against the Tigres team that is going to be, raring to go. So that's what I would do. I think he's played well enough to earn it, and I like the sink or swim approach. If he's not ready for that yet, well, now that's something right? And I'd rather find
and you
that
get a
out.
Second leg, and that's
exactly.
And if you're chasing a goal, or you're chasing a result more in the second leg, it probably makes more sense to have Kalani and Alex on the field together, and then you get a little bit more of an offensive look. But in this one, I think there's a pretty good argument to be made. Alex Roldan at right back, Tino Lopez at center back, and then Reagan Nuhu. And on the same token, that's why I think we're going to see Dotson and Roldan instead of Brunel and Roldan.
Yeah,
I just think this is Brian's going to default to his sort of like vet, and I don't think it's wrong in this case. I actually kind of agree with that decision. I think if that's what they do, I don't have a problem Dotson starting this game. I thought he looked good coming off the bench.
Right.
And then we'll probably see Ferreira and Rusnak, and then Rothrock on the left, I would assume, and Morris up top. I mean, I'll take that. I like that lineup.
Yeah, I think that it's about as good as you can do right now at this point, especially for for a road game in CONCACAF. I think it's going to be a tough game. This is clearly the best team the Sounders have played all year, and I don't think it's particularly close.
I mean, Vancouver and
Vancouver
San Jose are
was
both
quite
pretty good
good.
teams.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Neither one of them have Angel Correa on the team, so
That's fair.
But
fair.
but I mean, Marco Farfan plays for Tigres, so like how good can they be really? I mean, they're a good team. They I think finished second in the Apertura, right? This year,
Yeah, they're. I mean, right now they're mid-table,
pretty decidedly mid-table. Yeah,
and they're coming off a loss to Tijuana.
Yeah.
And they lost to Juarez this year. I mean, this is they've had some injuries, and so I think they have not really. I don't know if this is going to be like their full strength side, but
right.
This is a wounded Tigres team that to me feels ripe for, if the Sounders can get, like, to me, the ideal result is probably 1-1, like, or 2-2, I suppose. But like, anything better than 1-1, I will consider an absolute victory. 1-1, I would have no qualms with at all. I mean, obviously I'd take 0-0 too. But getting that road goal would give me some nice peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's on the table, right? I think that this is still a Tigres team. When they're at their best, they're not grinding out results. They're scoring goals. So
right.
I think that's, I think the Sounders are capable of doing that. And the Sounders are capable of grinding out results. And I think that helps quite a bit, having that confidence coming into the game. I don't think they're going to be intimidated by Tigres at all. I think the days of going down to Mexico and just getting absolutely waxed are largely over, right? Like those Santos Laguna teams that they played in like the early 2010s.
Right.
I just don't see this Tigres team being a team capable of doing that to the Sounders team, which is nice. It's nice to feel pretty confident going into these games. But yeah, I mean, it's, it is a tough game. It's a tough place to play for sure. It feels really good to have what feels like a very high stakes Champions League game again. The Vancouver games, like,
it doesn't quite feel like Champions League because it's an MLS opponent and it's a Cascadia opponent at that.
Right, exactly. Even though the Whitecaps, maybe they are better than Tigres at this point. I think that that's totally possible. It just doesn't feel quite the same. And yeah, the road looks pretty. I don't want to say easy, but it looks, it looks like they could make a run. If they get past this team, it looks like they can make a run.
No, I would say if they win this one, I think they're going to be the favorites against whoever they face in the semifinals, either America or Nashville. And then if it's Toluca in the final, Toluca might be the best team in North America. But the thing is that because they won both legs of the round of 16, that gives them a really good shot at hosting the final. And I'll take the Sounders' chances hosting, honestly, anybody. I'm not going to say that they're going to be the favorites. And again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But I mean, I like this. I like the Sounders at home against anybody. So yeah, if they can get past Tigres, I think they're in good shape. Now, Tigres is not going to roll over. They just walloped FC Cincinnati 5 goals in the return leg. That's gotta be a, and they've got some real players on that team. They've got guys who are very, very good. Like this is not a bad team.
No, it's not. I mean, it's Andre Pierre Gignac, despite being 40, is still very good in front of goal.
Yeah.
It takes him a while to get in front of goal at this point, but when he's there, he's very effective. Angel Correa is an extremely good player. They are a very talented team, but I feel good about the Sounders' chances in this one. I really do. I think that it's always tough, to go into Mexico against any teams, but like the very bottom teams. But and I think I would much rather play Tigres at this stage of the tournament than like a semifinal, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that it's going to be more intimidating and it's going to be higher pressure. And I do think that the Sounders having the return leg, like, this is probably not going to be the exciting, free-flowing game that people want to see at this point in the season after playing so many games on the road. I'm sure the Sounders are going to approach this one very similar to the way that they've approached, the St. Louis game or the Houston game or whatever it is. But, I mean, would you want to go out and try to score 5 goals in this environment? I don't think I would. I don't think that's really the right approach. So,
No.
Do what you're good at. And I think what the Sounders are good at is getting the results they need out of games like this one.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, the other thing I wanted to just touch on is Fox 13 apparently has a camera trained on Lumen Field right now. And if you are so inclined, you can watch. I'm stealing this line from you, but you can watch grass grow.
Yeah.
They today were putting down the grass. I believe they got about halfway done, and presumably tomorrow they will finish the job. So if you're listening to this, you can, Fox 13. I would just go to Fox 13, and you should be able to find the link there. But it is kind of cool to see the grass being put in. I don't know if it's how big of a deal it is.
It's weirdly relaxing. I don't know. It was nice to have up on the second monitor when I was in a meeting, and I just when I needed to zone out, I could just look over at that, and it was nice to watch.
Yeah, it is. I gotta admit, I'm a little surprised that we're April 6th and they're just now putting the grass in.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm going to assume this is part of the plan. Like, they know exactly what they're doing, and that this is all part of it. And I think it probably speaks to how much work it took to lay the foundation. Apparently it's like a foot, 14 inches, something like that, of infill and sand. And it's going to feel like a real grass pitch, even more so than last year's Club World Cup, supposedly. So I'm excited to see it. I don't know that I'll ever get a walk on it, but I am.
Right.
It'll be neat to have. Like, I still love seeing grass on Lumen Field. Like, last year was really cool to see it, and especially over an extended period like it was last year. But we're gonna have this grass until like July 19th or something. It's gonna be there a long time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we'll play like half of our home games on it this year, probably something like that.
Yeah, like 6 or 7. Yeah, absolutely. Almost half at least a third of our home games.
Yeah, pretty cool. I was up there this weekend. I walked from Pioneer Square to T-Mobile, and walking by Lumen, it feels very real. Like the World Cup feels very real in a way.
Have they started doing activate? Like, is it starting to feel like a FIFA space?
They've got some signage up. All of the bars in the area have shifted from Seahawks centric advertising to World Cup centric advertising. It's feeling, it's gonna feel a lot more FIFA-y in 2 weeks, I'm sure. And then especially, in a month, but it'll be cool. It'll be cool to see.
And I don't know. I assume most of our listeners are get into Seattle with some regularity, but in case you haven't been here recently, it is really remarkable how beautiful like the downtown area is. Like, as even Pioneer Square, the waterfront right now is undergoing this unbelievable transformation. And the waterfront to me is like, look, I feel whatever you feel about the World Cup, and I think I have mixed feelings about it. I think that there's plenty of reason to be skeptical of FIFA and everything else that's going on. But I'll tell you right now, I am convinced that at the end of the World Cup, that the Seattle waterfront is going to maybe be the most famous waterfront in the world. I mean, it's like it's a sight to behold, and it's going to get so much. Like, it's going to be beautiful weather. It's going to, it's going to be amazing. Like, that part of it is really exciting. I am excited to see Seattle get its glow up.
That was the other thing I did Saturday. Was I walked from T-Mobile up to Sculpture Park, and I went along the waterfront the whole way. And it's just, if you have not been down there in a while, it's better than you think it is. It's better than you think it's going to be. You can't overstate it. You can't. It's beautiful, and downtown feels like Pioneer Square feels more happening than like Westlake does at this point.
I would Totally agree.
Yeah,
More than South Lake Union for sure.
Yeah, you can still pretty much avoid the CBD, unfortunately, but the waterfront is beautiful, and it feels very. It just feels like a big city in a way that it hasn't maybe sometimes in the past, like especially when you get down to the waterfront. It's beautiful. There were so many people out, and there's going to be 10 times as many during the World Cup. It's going to be. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get in any games, but I'm going to come up and hang out at least a little bit during the games, because I think it's just going to be sort of a once in a lifetime experience to have in Seattle for, good reasons and unfortunately probably some bad ones as well. But, still a unique experience that I think is worth having.
Yeah. And along those lines, the plan right now is that Sounder Heart and Scuffed podcast, which people may or may not know is a U.S. national team podcast, are going to be sort of doing a joint party at Fast Fashion. We're going to do some game day activities when the U.S. is playing Australia. I think we're going to have we'll probably do some sort of get together the night before, either at Fast Fashion, maybe Project 9, kind of figuring out the details there. But there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. I got to say, the Sounder Heart headquarters, which is in the ID, is also like right outside. Even this is sort of like brings it all home. There's all this construction going on right now where they're like upgrading some of the lighting, and it's we are located on a little bit of a seedy corner, but it'll be interesting to see if it's not seedy, at least during the World Cup. But I am really like that part of it. I am excited for. I am disgusted by the ticketing practices. I am skeptical of all the political stuff that's going around the World Cup, but there is some like on the ground things that I think will be cool. And, I'm excited to finally ride the light rail to the east side. I have to get around to doing that at some point, but I don't know. This is still a couple months away, but we're getting close now. I should also say, I don't think we've publicly announced this yet, but we are officially going to be doing a second issue of For the Sounder Heart magazine. We are probably going to start taking pre-orders maybe as soon as next week. We have already stories starting to come in. We are going to be writing about Belgium. We're going to be writing about the Iranian diaspora. We are talking about the previous Seattle World Cup bid. All kinds of stuff that I think people are going to find really fun and interesting. We'll have profiles on all 7 teams that are going to be playing in Seattle. It's going to be a packed issue with lots and lots of content, and hopefully people want to buy that one as much as they bought the first one, which we sold about 1,600 copies, which is pretty cool. Circulation of this one we're thinking is going to be closer to 2,000. So, and if people want that first issue, we still have issues available. Just go to Sounder Heart, and there are links all over the place on there. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I think. Got anything else from you, Aaron?
I don't think so. We packed a lot into this one, so
yeah. All right, well, let's get out of here. I am Jeremiah Shan, signing off on behalf of Aaron and Lickett. Also, want to say thank you to our sponsors, Full Pool Wines, and of course, our subscribers who make this all work. I just want to say thank you again to everyone who is subscribing and making this thing happen. With all that said, this is No Study Yet Disc, part of the Sounder Heart Podcast Network. And remember, you'll never get alone.
Let's go f***ing Sounders.